Hey everybody, welcome to the Let's Get Deep podcast, a sacred pause in a busy world. This is where you will breathe, you will reset, you will reflect, and remember who you are. Body, soul, spirit. My name is Lethabo, and I'm so glad that you are here. But before we get into it, do me a favor and just take a deep breath in right where you are and let it out. Just let this moment meet you right where you are. So, for the very first season of this podcast, we will be exploring what it truly means to rest and what it means to live from a place of rest, just so that we can heal, so that we can show up as our full self, as our authentic self, as our healthy selves in the world. So if you've been feeling a bit weary, if you've been feeling a bit tired, if you've been exhausted or even burnt out, then tune in for this season. But even if you're just looking for a little space to just, breathe in a world that is so full of so much noise and chaos, then you're definitely in the right place. Beyond that, if you're looking for more holistic ways of living, holistic health and wellness tips and practices, then definitely tune in, because resting goes deeper than what we can imagine and what we may know. So the plan is to really go deep, as the name of the podcast says. So in this very first episode, I want to lay down the foundation of everything. Today we'll be exploring what rest is and what it is not, and why so many of us still feel exhausted no matter how much we quote unquote rest, or no matter how much we sleep. We'll be unpacking the difference between being tired, fatigued, and burnt out. And then I will also leave you with one powerful question during a guided moment of restoration. So make sure that you stay tuned to the very end in order to reap those benefits of being in a moment of stillness, a moment of a guided restoration. So stay tuned until then. So let's get into it, right? So what is rest? What exactly is resting? Because somewhere along the way we have complicated the whole topic of resting, and I completely get it, right? It's not the easiest thing to do. It's not the easiest thing to accomplish. And you will see why in this episode, but also in the other episodes to follow. We have been treating rest as if it's something that we have to earn after working. It's as if it's a reward, right? It must come after some sort of strenuous activity. And that's not what it is. We're not supposed to treat it as that. We need to treat it as what it truly is, which is a rhythm. That's what resting is. At its core, it's a rhythm. I used to think that resting is what you do when you are tired and you have a long day, or maybe you feel a bit weary or stressed out, and therefore, you're called to rest. But over time, I've learned that sometimes you can sleep for 8 hours or 9 hours and still wake up feeling weary. And that's when I realized that, hey, rest is more than just a break or sleeping, and that it's a way of being. As I said, it's a rhythm. And yet we live in a world where most people, when they think of rest, they think of sleeping, they think of going on vacation, a weekend getaway, a spa massage, and so forth. And while those are good and they have their moments and their times, and best believe I do them myself, they don't give us the full picture of what resting is. According to the Oxford Dictionary, rest is the state of ceasing work or movement in order to relax, refresh oneself, or recover strength. And what this tells us is that science agrees that rest is not just the physical aspect of it. It's not only about resting your physical body, or it's not only about sleeping. Another study describes it as a state of reduced mental and physical activity that allows recovery and restoration. So in simple terms, rest helps us return into a state of balance. Balance in our body, in our soul, and in our spirit. In other words, yes, it's physical, but it's not just physical. It's also emotional, it's also mental, and it's also spiritual. So right where you are, perhaps just notice in your body if you need, or your body has been asking for rest. A lot of people often see rest as a waste of time. Others see it as being lazy. Others see it as a form of procrastination, which they're not entirely wrong. But however, procrastination, there's layers to it, right? And others see scrolling as, resting, binge watching shows. And while those are okay, but sometimes they can act as numbing tools. They can act as us. We can find pleasure in those things, and trying to avoid certain emotions, and therefore they help us avoid emotions, they help us avoid situations. So resting is not scrolling, it's not escapism, it's not binge watching. Unfortunately, we live in a world where all of that is being glorified. We live in a culture that glorifies being busy. Literally from the moment that you wake up and you look at your phone, and the thing is, we're being wired to look at our phones immediately when we wake up, and we go straight into social media. And what you see on social media is people grinding, hustling, moving, producing, doing all of these things, because that's what people show us, right? They don't show us the full picture. And when we see that, we are sort of slowly starting to equate being busy, producing, and hustling and doing all of these things as if it's important. And to a certain extent, we have created a whole identity around being productive that we don't know what it truly means to rest. And unfortunately, if we keep going and going and going without really pausing or finding and being in true rest, if we don't stop, our bodies will get to a point where they stop us by force. So if we don't stop by choice, our bodies will eventually stop us by force. I always say that our bodies are always talking. They're always giving us signals. They're always giving us cues. But yet we ignore those signs, those cues, those signals, because they start very subtle. It starts with a small whisper here and there. But eventually our bodies will scream. And when they start screaming, that's when we have the fatigue, the anxiety, the depression, the illness, and then we have burnout. So maybe Your body has been asking you to just take a pause. Perhaps it's been whispering. How about you actually listen and do something about it this time around? And I know it's not easy because I've been there. I've ignored the whispers before. Even worse, I've ignored the screams before, trying to push through the fatigue and all of that. Until one day my body and my emotions and my entire being came down crashing, and it completely shut down. So over a couple of years ago, I went through a period whereby, now looking back, I realized that I had undiagnosed depression. The depression was probably for over a couple of years, maybe 2 or so years. And during that time, I didn't know that it was depression. I really didn't know, because it's one thing to speak about mental health and it's another to experience it yourself, irrespective of how deep it goes and all of that. But with me, it was, I'd say, a mild form of it, because I could push through it. I could push through the lack of focus, the lack of motivation, the losing of interest in the things that I enjoyed and all of that. I thought that I was doing okay because I was going to church, I was feeling my emotions, I was crying. I was doing what I possibly could do, not knowing that, hey, I actually wasn't, because I was pushing through. I was pushing past the emotions themselves and not feeling them fully. Unfortunately, that came to a halt, if I may call it a halt, when my mom passed away. So when my mom passed away, everything came crashing. This is when the stress that I was dealing with during the period where I was undiagnosed with depression, the stress, the depression was colliding now with the grief, and I ended up burning out. So imagine the state that I was in. And that point was my breaking point, because everything came crashing down. But also, as much as it was my breaking point, it was also my turning point. It was a new beginning, in the sense that I discovered that, hey, there's more to resting. Because best believe the time I was dealing with the depression before my mom passed away, I was also resting. I was, leading a healthy lifestyle, relatively healthy lifestyle. So I was resting. By rest, I mean I was sleeping enough. However, when the loss happened and I literally reached rock bottom, then I realized that, hey, my body needs more than sleep. And during that time, that's when I discovered that, hey, resting is more than just a wellness principle or a wellness routine or whatever you may want to call it, and that it's also a spiritual posture. Because while I was at rock bottom, I mean, there's nowhere else to go. There's nothing else to do beyond that. And I had to get to a point where I surrendered. I surrendered to the process. I surrendered to healing. I surrendered to God. And just in the midst of all of that, I realized that, hey, resting is also surrender. You need to get to a point where you allow yourself to stop what you're doing and realize that you can't create a whole identity around productivity and just loosen up your grip and not control everything, and just surrender what is not done at that time. So that's why I'm like, rest is surrender. And that whole experience taught me that, yes, there were other aspects of it where I needed to heal emotionally, where I needed to deal with the grief and all the other factors that led to the depression and all of that. Yes, all of that, I get that part. However, because I was, sleeping enough and the sleep was not helping at all, I was still empty on the inside. I realized that, hey, there's more to this. It's more than just the physical aspect of it. Because why am I still tired even when I'm sleeping enough? So during that time, that's when I realized that not all forms of exhaustion are the same. There's a huge difference between being tired, being fatigued, and being burnt out. So tired is when your body is saying, hey, I just need to sleep. I need to recover. You've had a long day, you've had a long week, whatever the case may be, and now you just need some time to rest a bit. This is short term, it's temporary, it's easy to recover. However, with fatigue goes a little bit deeper. Fatigue is when your nervous system is so overwhelmed and overstimulated, where you even have this persistent lack of energy, lack of motivation, lack of focus that no amount of sleep can fix. This is when you will need more than just sleeping. You need to partner sleeping with something else, and usually that would involve a lifestyle change, because you can't go on the way that you have been going. And then with burnout is the far extreme case on the spectrum. If I were to put it on a spectrum, you have tiredness on one side and burnout on the other side, and then fatigue somewhere in the middle. So burnout is what happens when you ignore fatigue for a really long time. This is not just physical anymore. This is emotional, it's mental, and it's spiritual. This is when you are completely drained and depleted. And this burnout will need you to have a full restoration process and a healing journey. You'd often need lifestyle changes, some structural changes as well, because your body, your spirit, your soul would have given out. You can't push through burnout. If you try to do that, you're probably going to end up killing yourself one way or another. So when burnout hit me, I was in a state where I realized that, hey, I'm not myself. Because yes, I'm showing up, but I'm barely there. I'm functioning, but I'm barely present. It's as if something on the inside of me is dying. I want to say it's empty, but it felt like there was nothing within me. And that's what burnout does. It numbs out the parts of us that make us feel alive. And maybe right now, you are somewhere along that spectrum. Maybe you're not fully burnt out, but you know that you're not in restoration mode as well. You're not working from a state of full restoration. And the thing is, in recognizing where you are is important. It matters, because it will determine how you respond and therefore how you heal. So I want to get to the practical part to say, what then do you do when you feel tired, or perhaps you feel like you've tried everything but you're still not feeling rested or restored or fully refreshed? So during that time, while I was still healing and on my healing journey and so forth, I discovered that there are 7 types of rest. Disclaimer, a little disclaimer, I think that there are 8. However, I'm not going to talk about the 8th one today. I'll talk about it next week, so stay tuned for that. So there are 7 types of rest, and I hope as we go through the list, you'll realize that, hey, maybe I need to do that instead of that, or I need to sleep more, or maybe sleep is not really what I need to do right now. And hopefully you'll know what to do after this. And so when I discovered these types of rest, I realized that, hey, okay, now it makes sense. Yes, I needed to heal, but now it makes sense. So the very first type of rest is physical rest. Physical rest is when you're giving your body time to recover from some sort of exertion or some sort of stress. Could be an exercise or an activity of some sort, or whatever the case may be, but this is when you're recovering your body. It could be passive or active. Passive meaning you're sleeping or taking a nap, and active meaning you're doing light stretches or just taking a walk. So physical rest, you're resting your body. And then mental rest. Mental rest is basically stepping away from constantly planning and overthinking and multitasking and doing everything. You're giving your mind a break from all the cognitive load that you carry in your day. This is you taking mindful breaks in between your work. Think about a person who's studying. They can't constantly study throughout the day without taking a break. They're going to have to take a break every hour or so just so that their brain can process the information. So this is when you feel like you can't think anymore, you're overthinking, you're spiraling, all of that. So when you feel that way, then you know you are due for a mental rest. This can look like you just stepping off of your computer or your books and just going outside, looking at nature, looking at the sun, things like that. Or just maybe sitting in a moment of stillness, doing nothing, allowing the information to just settle in your head and so forth. There are various ways that you can rest mentally. And then the third one is emotional rest. Emotional rest is the relief, I want to say, of pretending. Because with emotions, it's easy to pretend about how we're feeling about certain things and how we feel about certain situations. And therefore, emotionally resting looks like you not pretending about how you're feeling. It looks like you sitting with your emotions, allowing them to just pass through your body and feeling them, and then just basking in that. And this can look like bringing in a professional or talking to someone that you trust. This is when therapy comes in and you just being real with how you're feeling. And this doesn't always have to be about the heavy emotions or the negative, quote-unquote, negative emotions such as sadness, such as grief, such as frustration or anger. This can be about the good feelings, the joy, the happiness, feeling at peace, all of those good emotions, and just basking in those as well, feeling them, not bypassing them, not postponing to feel them, nothing like that, not suppressing anything. Because I feel like we often speak about suppressing the not so good emotions, but I feel like we can also suppress or try to postpone the good emotions as well. But I feel like emotionally resting can be a bit difficult because emotions can be heavy. Emotions can be scary as well. So I know with this one, it may not be the easiest to do. And ask me, I know from my own journey and just healing through it. Feeling your emotions is not the easiest thing to do, and it links to mental health as well, and that is a whole topic on its own. So I won't go into further detail, but yeah, with emotionally resting, it's just being real with your emotions, and if you can, perhaps invite a professional or speak to someone that you trust about your feelings. That could help out as well. And can I also say crying also helps out. It relieves that pressure in your heart. So if you can cry, allow yourself to cry as well. And then the next one is social rest. This is when you choose the relationships that replenish you, not the ones that drain you. So instead of choosing the events, the occasions, the interactions that you know that they're going to drain you, then rather not. You choose the relationships that will pour into you. This is when you stop pretending and you're just choosing to be present with the people that you love and care about. This can go hand in hand with whether you are an introvert or an extrovert, and you know that, okay, this time I just need to be alone, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert. Or perhaps this time around, you know, you need to call in that one friend or two, and you know that with them, they will pour into you and just replenish you one way or another. So this is where you let go of the interactions and the people that drain you. And then the next one is sensory rest. I feel like I love sensory resting because I know what it feels like to be overly stimulated. So sensory rest is when you feel stimulated in your senses. This is where you feel the need to dim the lights, to reduce the noise, and just sit in silence. Just sit and just breathe. Allow your senses some time and some space to just breathe. You let go of the clutter, the overstimulation, and everything else. This can look like taking a break from your entire phone. I wanted to say from your social media, but literally from your entire phone, where you have just 1 hour without any devices, for example, just to give yourself some time from consuming everything. I feel like this one can also link to the mental one, where you could have a whole information overload from social media and so forth, and then you feel the need to just take a break. So that's what sensory rest is. And then the second last one is creative rest. Creative rest is basically reconnecting back to your sense of wonder, to the beauty around you. This is letting inspiration come to you without forcing it. It makes me think of perhaps a creator or an artist who is so deep in their work that they even lose track of time, that they're in their zone, and they're flowing and they're flowing and they're flowing. So that's what creative rest is. It's when you don't force the inspiration, you don't force the creativity, you don't force the innovation. And if you get to a point where you feel like you're stuck and the creativity is not coming, then you know you're due to just step away from what you're doing. Perhaps listen to music, perhaps walk in nature, perhaps do something else that will create some sense of joy, without really expecting anything back, you know. This is making me think of maybe volunteering as well. This is where you're just giving off your time without expecting to get it back, or just doing something bigger than you and allowing those creative juices to flow. And when those creative juices are not flowing, then you know you need to step out. Again, all of these can link with each other, the different types of rest. And then the last one is spiritual rest. This is when you reconnect or you connect with God and yourself. And you're also reconnecting with your sense of purpose and whatever assignment that God has placed in your heart, or whatever dream that He has placed in your heart. This is reconnecting back to that. And it's also a sense of receiving love instead of performing, striving, and doing whatever that you need to do, but just receiving unconditional love. And that really the true essence of it we can get from God. And obviously this includes things like being in stillness, being in meditation, worshiping, spending time in your word, and so forth and so forth. So these are the 7 types of rest. You have physical, you have mental, you have emotional, social, sensory, creative, and spiritual. So looking back, I can see the ones that I thought I was doing, but not really so much. Because as much as I was physically resting, I feel like that's a done deal. It's a tick for me. But emotionally, as much as I was seeking help, but I wasn't really resting in the process of healing emotionally. I was pretending, or there were moments where I was pretending to be okay, even though when I wasn't really okay, or I would lighten or not take it serious. I would not take the depths of everything serious. And perhaps that's what I needed to focus on at the time. Yes, I needed to focus on everything because I was fully depleted. Meaning, just because sleep doesn't work doesn't mean now that I have to not sleep anymore. I needed to continue sleeping, but I needed to add all these other ones as well. Another one that I feel like I was neglecting was mental rest, because what shocked me the most was that after the loss, and I went back to working, or I went back to work because I had taken a break or taken some day off, was that I couldn't work at the pace and at the rate that I used to work at. I couldn't produce the way that I used to produce. And that frustrated me, because I'm like, I know I'm smart. I know I can think. I know my capabilities. So I didn't understand what was happening. And that's when I realized that, hey, the grief and the depression and the weight of everything was literally affecting my mental state. And I needed to then surrender. As I said, resting is a form of surrender. I needed to surrender to the process and surrender to God and surrender to my healing. And that's when I realized that, hey, holistic rest matters more than anything, because it's more than just the physical. It goes deep into the soul. So perhaps ask yourself, which of these types of rest have you been neglecting? What have you been focusing on instead of maybe focusing on another type of rest that you need, that your soul has been craving? Especially in this world where there's so much noise and so much going on, it's easy to neglect certain parts of us. And so, another aspect of it is that I mentioned that rest is a rhythm. And this is not something new, and it's also in the Bible. It is a biblical principle, and that's where I saw that biblical principle and rhythm ties back into the 7 types of rest. So if we go back to the book of Genesis, after God had created everything, he rested. Not because he was tired, but because he was done. And I would love to read the scripture itself. So Genesis 2, verse 2 to 3 says, "By the seventh day, God had finished the work he had been doing. So on the seventh day, he rested from all his work. Then God blessed the seventh day and made it holy." And what this tells us is that before there was ever any sort of work, there was rest. So in essence, creation started this entire rhythm. If we go into the depths of it, again, the same scripture or the entire of Genesis 1 and 2, you'll realize that in every day, it started as an evening and then there was morning. It started as rest and then there was work. Before there was any sort of hustling, there was holiness. Because God declared day 7 as holy. He declared resting as holy. The very first thing that God said was holy was rest. Before there was any sort of striving, there was stillness. But yet in this day and age, we have flipped the script. And we wonder why we are so weary, we are so tired, we are probably sick in general, like we have inflammation, why we're depressed and so forth, and dealing with all of these things because we're carrying everything that we're not supposed to carry. We're moving at a rhythm that we are not supposed to move at. Rest is a rhythm. Rest is surrender. And it requires intentionality. Therefore, rest is not waiting until everything is perfect and everything is completely done. Resting is neither us scrolling to escape, neither is it us sleeping away our days just to avoid what we're going through. It's not binge watching. It's not being lazy. There are others that think that resting is lazy. It's not being lazy. When you're resting, you're not quitting on your job. You're just gathering strength so that you can continue. When you rest, you're saying, God, I trust you to deal and to do what only you can do. You're the one who holds the entire world in the palm of your hands. We should stop carrying the world on our shoulders. So when we're not resting, we're basically saying to God, God, I don't trust you. That if I don't do this work, then it won't be done. That it is all on you. And that is a lot of pressure. That is a whole lot of pressure. And so maybe that is you. Maybe you're running. Maybe you've been hustling. You've been doing all of these things. So invite yourself to just a moment of stillness. Because sometimes the silence is where all the healing starts. And it's where God meets us. So before we end, I said I will leave you with a question, but I want to guide you into that question. So do me a favor, right where you are, If you are comfortable, if it is safe to do so, just close your eyes. Take a moment and just take a deep breath in and let it out. And just ask yourself while your eyes are closed, what rhythm have I been living by? And what rhythm is God inviting me back into? Because that question is what changed everything for me. It's what pulled me out of the striving, the pretending, the pushing through. It taught me that rest is not something that you can earn, that it's a rhythm that you return to. So let go of the need to earn rest. Let go of the guilt that comes with just being still. Let go of proving, of performing, of striving, because you are already enough. What rhythm have I been living by? May you remember that there remains then a Sabbath rest for the people of God. You can breathe that in and let it sink into your spirit. You can take one last deep breath in and let it out. If you had your eyes closed, then you can open them. And so thank you so much for going deep with me today. If you found this episode really helpful, if it spoke to you in any way, then share it with someone that you know will benefit from it. Share it with someone who's been weary, who's been tired, who's been stressed. And if you're looking to go a little bit deeper, sign up for my newsletter where I share different reflections and we go a bit deeper than this. And I'm recording this during the holiday season, or we're about to enter the holiday season, and I'll be hosting these weekly workshops where we go into our body, our soul, our spirit, and we rest and we prepare ourselves for the holidays so that we don't lose ourselves in the chaos. So if you know you definitely need some guidance on how to take care of yourself, on how to find peace in the midst of the chaos, on how to not pick up that holiday weight, then definitely tune in. This is about taking care of your entire being, your body, your soul, and your spirit, especially in a world that is forever telling us to compartmentalize ourselves. So definitely sign up to that newsletter and I will see you there. And until next time, make sure that you keep resting, you keep becoming whole, and you keep exploring life one breath at a time.